Hi, my name is Craig Griffiths and I'm a partner technology strategist with the Microsoft Surface team. And today I'm going to be talking to you about powering your transformation to modern management with Microsoft Surface. So digital transformation is fast becoming the lifeblood of every industry and indeed every business. Businesses today must innovate around how work gets done and where it gets done, and the devices and solutions needed to enable it all. So simply put, the way that we work is continuing to change. Remote and hybrid work are the new normal, and that in itself can bring with it many benefits, but that's not without its challenges. So what we're seeing is an increasingly complex IT environments due to numbers of devices connecting to the corporate network. There's a need to provision and deploy devices remotely without sacrificing security. There's a pressure to scale, bring services to market faster and reduce costs. And teams need flexible, productive and secure work from home options. And there's also growing cyber threats requiring more advanced security across devices, users, apps and their data. So with that in mind, there are 5 key pillars that make our devices Surface devices. We strive to innovate and make experiences personal and natural for everyone. And that starts with productivity. So our devices are centered around people, mobility, collaboration, and communication. Hardware that's really bringing to life all those great software features. We're inclusive by design, so Microsoft is intentional about including people with disabilities, and we've seen this with recent launches such as the Microsoft Adaptive Kit that's making it easier to use and navigate a Surface PC by identifying critical keys, matching ports to cables, and even opening Surface and other compatible devices. From a sustainability point of view, Microsoft as a business has made some big commitments in regards to being carbon negative by 2030, but we've also committed to making packaging and devices 100% recyclable by 2030 as well. So our devices have got things like all-day battery life, which will help to cut energy bills, as well as being devices that are reliable and durable throughout their life cycle. If we look at deployment and management, the ease of Autopilot and Endpoint Manager as ways to reduce costs for customers whilst maintaining a security posture can't be overlooked. And from a core security perspective, we're looking at referring to chip to cloud and that zero trust security model, which I'll elaborate on the next couple of slides. So today's workplace needs an integrated security solution. So known major cyber threats are increasingly targeting the firmware and pre-OS layers of computer systems. And that's precisely because anti-malware software isn't yet running. So in the crucial moments before the operating system and its protections are loaded, this is presenting a tremendous risk and opportunity for malware to strike, and hackers are knowingly designing malware to leverage this attack vector. So while software solutions are known and hardware solutions may indeed help, the need for a holistic out-of-the-box solution can't be understated. Hardware and software working together to create a strong security posture may be the only proactive way forward, given the scope and the risk of modern cybersecurity threats. I pulled out a few kind of data points. So there was a security signal study in March 2021, highlighting that firmware attacks are indeed on the rise. Security Signals, for context, is a comprehensive research report that's assembled with interviews from 1,000 security decision makers across various industries in the US, the UK, Germany, China, and Japan. And then a few of the stats that I pulled out from that report are that more than 80% of enterprises have experienced at least one firmware attack in the last 2 years. But of those 80%, only 29% of security budgets are actually allocated to protect firmware. Security Signals also found that 36% of businesses invest in hardware-based memory encryption, and less than half, 46%, are investing in hardware-based kernel protections. A full 21% of senior decision makers admitted that their firmware goes unmonitored today, which brings me nicely on to the next point around security. So Surface devices are built from the ground up and are secured from chip to cloud. But what does that mean? What is chip to cloud? So thinking about all layers of the ecosystem that the device lives in, chip is referring to Surface specific features such as the custom built UEFI, which is the Unified Extensible Firmware Interface. whereas cloud is referring to the operating system and the applications ecosystem that the device actually lives in. So ultimately, we're aiming for defense in depth across multiple layers, including hardware, firmware, software, applications, and identity. With all these layers being addressed, it results in a complete security solution from chip to cloud. When we think about, you might see the term as well, built-in versus bolt-on. This is in which Microsoft's thinking about techniques that may cause problems and what needs to be built into Windows to keep users productive and protected at the same time. So if we think about things like Windows Hello, if you don't have a password, someone can't steal it. If we're using fingerprint or facial biometrics, it's avoiding having that standard traditional password that may be weak, and it's replacing that with biometrics or Microsoft Authenticator app and other and PIN numbers as other ways to authenticate into the device. So chip to cloud security being built into the DNA of a Surface device. This all starts with the hardware and understanding if someone has tampered with the device. Then the firmware or BIOS all the way through to the cloud tools that can help you protect the endpoint from potential vulnerabilities, which is what's really meant by chip to cloud security from Microsoft. It's the Microsoft DNA from those components all the way through to the cloud management tools. So just to elaborate on a few of the components, we've got the TPM 2.0, which is across the whole portfolio of devices, and that's the trusted platform module. This is allowing the user to quickly and easily encrypt their data, enabling access only by authorized individuals. So the TPM 2.0 chips are implementing a secure and sandboxed environment for things like storing passwords, PIN numbers, and certificates. So essentially, that's where all the secrets are kept. We've also got the UEFI that I mentioned, which is the Unified Extensible Firmware Interface. This is exclusive to Surface and is replacing the standard basic input-output system BIOS with new features including things like faster startup and improved security. And this is built by Microsoft without third-party involvement. And what that's doing is it's ensuring significantly more control over the hardware of the device and ultimately giving speedier reaction times as well. And then we've got the DFCI, so the Device Firmware Configuration Interface. Again, this is exclusive with Surface, and DFCI is delivering cloud-scale remote firmware management with zero-touch device provisioning. Microsoft's own UEFI is allowing for a stronger DFCI implementation, which is enabling organizations to disable hardware elements and remotely lock the UEFI using Intune. So what that's doing really is it's providing a layer of hardware control on top of software-based policy management as implemented by device management MDM policies or configuration manager or group policy. So for example, organizations deploying devices in highly secure areas with sensitive information can prevent camera usage by removing the functionality at the hardware level. So from a device's standpoint, turning the camera off via a firmware setting is equivalent to physically removing that device from the camera. So it's essentially the same as drilling the device out. But then the benefit is that if the device was redeployed or we needed the camera to be turned back on, we can do that as well. A local admin could actually re-enable the service if they wanted to. So as we continue to work in this hybrid environment, Surface and Microsoft 365 have been giving people the freedom to work from where they want and how they want, all the time being protected by Microsoft security and modern manageability. The pillars that really differentiate Surface within this that I'll elaborate on in the next couple of slides are Microsoft designed and built components, factory level security protocols and inspection, advanced Windows security, and having that ultimate control via Microsoft Endpoint Manager. So we build our devices from the ground up to be the most secure devices and keep them up to date to ensure users are protected for the lifetime of the device, not just the day that it's purchased. So Surface is given the ability to deploy a device safely through Autopilot, which is pushing applications, policies straight out of the box. This is done by taking the device straight out of the factory to the end user with the custom built UEFI, which is essentially maintaining boot security on the device. When the device is first booted, there are steps that it goes through to ensure that the boot is in fact authentic and has not been manipulated before it's able to proceed to the next stage. The TPM that I mentioned earlier on the device encrypting the data for things like your BitLocker or your Windows Hello and certificates stored on the device. and that is used throughout the protection of the device for encryption. When buying a Surface device and subscribing through Microsoft 365, we've got that view that built-in is better than bolt-on, which again is Microsoft thinking about techniques that may cause problems and then building those solutions into devices to remediate the issue before it happens. So we make sure that our devices, our hardware, our firmware, drivers, and operating system will undergo thorough security design and inspection before shipping them to the end user. So if we look at security through the supply chain, what Surface is able to do is build devices in highly secure factories, but also ensure that the device and the code and the components on that device is highly inspected and comes from Microsoft, which is shown through certificates on the Surface devices. When it's booted for the first time with the UEFI, the device is secure and it is exactly the same one that left the factory. Component level inspection. This means that the different pieces of hardware or software that Microsoft has in to build the devices is assembled and inspected by Microsoft at a deep dive component level. And this is to ensure that the devices are in fact infection or malware free. Microsoft is also developing all of our own firmware drivers and operating systems, which are then signed by default. And if we think about secure logistics, this is how Microsoft is shipping the devices from the factory to distributors to actually maintain security. When the device is first booted, Microsoft are again enabled to ensure that because of the signatures on the device, that it's the same one that left the factory. We then utilize Windows Update to make sure that you are up to date with many new and emerging threats. And within this, Microsoft has developed virtualization-based security, VBS, and hypervisor code integrity, HVCI, both of which are using the power of hardware capabilities like virtualization to provide better protection against common and sophisticated malware by moving that sensitive security operations in the operating system to a strongly isolated environment that malware can't tamper with. And this security capability can stop most escalation of privilege attacks. Each of the Windows-based devices in the Surface portfolio is meeting heightened security bar for adoption of Windows 11. And with a built-in TPM security processor and advanced Windows virtualization, and it's also got secure boot enabled by default, which brings me nicely onto the next point about secure boot and boot guard. So the real value of these is ensuring that Windows is authentic and is signed with security keys inside the device, and that device won't boot unless those keys are there and are in fact authentic. Secure boot is enabled by the UEFI and the TPM 2.0, and that's ensuring that only code signed, measured, and correctly implemented can execute on a Surface device. And secure boot technology is preventing unauthorized code, boot code rather, from booting on the Surface device, which is protecting against things like bootkit malware or rootkit type malware infections on the device or against the device. Then again, by turning on things like BitLocker and Windows Hello, the data on the device can be encrypted. But we also have things like passwordless signing, as I said earlier. So we're not using a traditional password, we're using biometric authentication, we're using the Microsoft Authenticator app, or we're using a PIN number to heighten our security posture. But then on top of that, we've also got things like Windows Defender Credential Guard, which is shipping enabled with Surface devices. And that's isolating and hardening key systems and user secrets, which is actually making an attack against user credentials much harder to perform. And all of these factors really lead to the advanced capability that Windows brings on top of the hardware level with the UEFI. So work done with the Microsoft Endpoint team or Intune team to do things like DFCI, controlling down to the firmware level, so that Microsoft can reduce the attack vector on the device with the ability to, like I said earlier, turn off the camera. But you can also turn off the ability to boot from USB, you can turn off the microphones, you can turn off the speakers, the Bluetooth, the Wi-Fi, and this is a really powerful differentiation that a Surface product's got. We've also got automatic updates from Windows for Business occurring on the device, And with that telemetry that Microsoft keeps, Microsoft's gaining insight into the vulnerabilities to the operating system. Windows Update for Business, enabling IT administrators to keep the Windows device in their organization always up to date with the latest security defenses and Windows features by directly connecting these systems to the Windows Update service. And then again, the final point on this slide is that granular firmware management so that IT can reduce the attack vector. Microsoft Endpoint Manager is combining services that you may know and are already be using in some cases, and that's including Intune, Configuration Manager, Desktop Analytics, Core Management, and Windows Autopilot. And these services are part of the Microsoft 365 stack to help secure access, protect data, and ultimately respond to and manage risk. I'm just going to take a really quick look at Windows Autopilot on Surface as a bit of an overview. Autopilot is the cornerstone to M365 modern manageability. And that said, Autopilot is simply a gateway to the powerful feature sets of Intune with the ability to manage device policy, applications, and settings. And then as well, you've got Azure Active Directory, which is providing identity services to unlock access to an individual's application or data. The true value of Autopilot is that it's eliminating the need for costly and time-consuming gold corporate images, and it's allowing the device to be shipped directly to the end user from the factory or from the distributor, which is utilizing the base image of Windows on the device. A key strength really of Surface and Autopilot is the ability to use a clutter-free image of Windows and pre-installed full versions of Office straight from the factory. So via Intune and Surface, deploying Office is as simple as purchasing a licensing key and enabling Office within minutes of the first boot. Every single Surface device is shipped straight out of the factory for Autopilot, and that's whether you deploy it or not. And we harvest the device ID of each Surface and store it in the cloud for future device management. So just a really quick overview of the lifecycle of a Surface device. So with Windows Autopilot on the device, your organization decides to invest in a Surface, then a partner builds a tailored solution for your organization. You and your partner then build the Autopilot deployment profile into Endpoint Manager. The deployment profiles are then assigned to Azure Active Directory and Intune. It's then shipped directly to a user, in this case somebody called Anna. Anna would then unbox her new Surface and sign in with her corporate credentials. Anna's profile with all the apps and policies that she needs are automatically deployed through Azure Active Directory and Intune, and then the device is fully set up and ready for productive use. That then can be re-provisioned for future use. So say Anna left the company, the device could be re-provisioned for future users through Autopilot reset. And then when the device reaches the end of its life cycle, it's then deprovisioned and can leave the organization either to be reused or to be recycled if you're going down the sustainability route. So just before I finish the presentation, in this section and the final section, I'm going to talk a little bit around Microsoft Surface Management Portal. So Microsoft Surface and the Microsoft Endpoint Manager team have come together to create a seamless post-sale experience and to help manage Surface devices in one location. So in order to do this, we've added Surface specific features into Microsoft Endpoint Manager. And if you're an Intune customer and already have Surface devices, then that's bringing together the best of both worlds. So if we look at reducing costs through the organization, we've compared the time it takes to find warranty information for, I think it was 10,000 devices. And with existing solutions in place, this can take up to 16 hours. But with the Surface Management Portal, IT administrators can access this within minutes. Users now have one location to view the list of Surface devices in the organization, and users will be able to view Surface-specific features under the Devices tab in Microsoft Endpoint Manager. IT can also view the health of all Surface devices and gain insights into the status of Surface devices under all devices in one quick view. And what you can do as well is you can access important insights such as low device storage, non-compliant devices, inactive devices, not encrypted devices, and all devices that you've got that visibility if they need immediate action. in order to consistently ensure that the devices are secure in your organization. Users can now also view warranty data of Surface devices, which could help you to plan for support request initiations and device refresh in the future. Warranty information is shown in the portal once the devices have been enrolled through Microsoft Endpoint Manager. And then finally, in terms of support, we've consolidated various sources and brought you an experience that lets IT monitor all Surface support requests in that one location through Endpoint Manager. So in terms of getting started, some system requirements for the management portal are to have a Microsoft Endpoint Manager license. Devices then need to be enrolled into Intune, and you actually need to have Surface devices in your estate of products. And then from an installation point of view, the management portal will be automatically available from Microsoft Endpoint Manager. And finally, availability-wise, the tool will start to appear in the US from the 28th of October, and then we'll be rolling out as generally available worldwide by the end of 2021. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you for listening. Got through quite a lot in a short space of time. But if you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat, and I will do my best to answer them. Thank you again, and enjoy the rest of your day.